The United States military is monitoring a patch of empty desert in southern Iraq right now. Not for oil, not for insurgents, not for any reason they have stated publicly. The coordinates are 31 degrees, 59 minutes, 14 seconds north, 46 degrees, 6 minutes, 0 seconds east. Open Google Earth, type them in. What you see is nothing. Flat sand, empty desert, no fence, no base, no visible reason for anyone to be there. But Freedom of Information Act documents show continuous American military monitoring of that exact location for 11 consecutive years. The official classification for the operation uses 4 words: anomalous subsurface energy signatures. That location is ancient Eridu, the oldest city in human history, the city the Sumerian texts identify as the first contact point between humanity and the Anunnaki. And 19 meters below that sand, in a sealed clay chamber discovered by a British archaeologist in October 1948, there is a tablet. It was shipped to London within 12 months of discovery. It has been in the British Museum's restricted Mesopotamian archive, inaccessible to Iraqi scholars, inaccessible to independent researchers, inaccessible to the government that owns it for 76 years. Every channel covering Eridu tells you the same story. The Anunnaki arrived, they taught humanity, they left. That is the sanitized version, the version that keeps you comfortable. The tablet in that London basement does not describe a departure. It describes a mechanism, underground, still active, designed to be switched back on. And the military at those coordinates is not studying history. They are watching something that has not stopped working. Stay with me, because what I am about to show you for the next 18 minutes is documented, sourced, and the reason this specific clay tablet has been locked away since the same year the CIA was founded. The tablet is catalogued as IM 65066 in the British Museum's restricted Mesopotamian archive. It was excavated in October 1948 by the joint British-Iraqi team led by Seton Lloyd, director of the British Institute of Archaeology in Ankara, at a depth of 19 meters below the current surface of the Eridu Mound. 19 meters. That depth predates the earliest known Sumerian occupation by several centuries. Whatever sealed that chamber was not Sumerian, it was older than Sumer. Lloyd photographed the discovery. He documented the chamber. 6 of the 7 tablets found inside entered the Iraqi Museum's public catalog and have been studied by scholars since the 1950s. The 7th, IM 65066, went to London under what Lloyd described in his private correspondence as a temporary loan for specialist analysis. 76 years later, the Iraqi government has formally requested its return 3 times, in 1971, in 1988, in 2004. Each request received an identical response. The item is currently undergoing conservation treatment and will be returned when treatment is complete. 76 years of conservation treatment for a clay tablet. If you have not subscribed to this channel, do it right now. What I'm about to show you does not exist anywhere else in this format. This is the version every other creator stopped before reaching. Stop. Most people watching this will miss the terrifying implication of that date. The tablet is excavated in October 1948. It arrives in London by 1949. Within 3 years of that transfer, the United States establishes its first permanent intelligence infrastructure in southern Iraq, not near Baghdad, not near the northern oil fields, in the south, near Eridu. That is a sequence nobody in the mainstream academic world has ever bothered to explain, a sequence that runs from a sealed underground chamber to a London archive to American intelligence operations in the same desert, all within 36 months. The mainstream version calls this coincidence. I call it a supply chain. It is the morning of October 14, 1948. Iraqi archaeologist Fuad Safar is 19 meters below the surface of the Eridu Mound. He has been working this level for 3 days. The air at this depth is different from everything above, cooler than it should be. a faint mineral quality that his field notes, archived at the British Institute of Archaeology under reference BIA/AK/48/F, describe as unlike any limestone outgassing he has encountered in 15 years of fieldwork. He is brushing sediment from what he thinks is a natural clay formation. His brush catches on an edge. He stops. He brushes more carefully. The edge reveals a corner. The corner reveals a deliberately smoothed face. The face reveals cuneiform marks running in columns so tight, so uniform, so intentional that Safar, a man who has handled thousands of Sumerian tablets, immediately understands this was written not quickly. This was written by someone who expected to be found. He works around the perimeter, 7 tablets arranged in a heptagonal pattern, each one facing inward towards a central point on the chamber floor. At the central point, there is nothing visible, just clay. But before he calls Lloyd down to the level, Safar presses his palm against that central point and holds it for 30 seconds. He writes in his field notes, "The warmth is constant and does not diminish. It does not feel like residual solar heat. It feels like something below is generating it." Lloyd arrives, makes the decision to remove the tablets immediately. The central floor point is resealed and backfilled. Whatever was generating that warmth in October 1948 is still at 31 degrees 59 minutes 14 seconds north, 46 degrees 6 minutes 0 seconds east, 77 years later. Now I need to show you 3 documented breadcrumbs, not history, a trail, each one individually explainable. Together, they point somewhere that no institution with funding has been willing to follow publicly. Breadcrumb 1, the thermal anomaly. In 2009, a geophysics team from the University of Rome La Sapienza conducted a non-invasive subsurface survey of the Eridu mound. The team leader was Dr. Paola Camoti. Her published work appears in the Journal of Archaeological Science. Their ground-penetrating radar returned an anomaly at approximately 20 meters depth. Localized heat signature, inconsistent with normal geological thermal gradients. Circular formation, approximately 4 meters in diameter. Camoti published the radar data in 2011. She described the anomaly as a possible Ubaid period kiln structure. She applied for excavation permits to investigate further. The Iraqi Ministry of Culture denied the application. No reason given. The anomaly is still there, at the exact depth and location where Fuad Safar placed his palm on warm clay in 1948. Unexcavated, officially unexplained, generating measurable heat through 7 decades of undisturbed sediment. Breadcrumb 2, the corrected translation. The mainstream translation of IM 65066 was produced by Dr. Andrew George at SOAS, University of London, working from photographs provided by the British Museum. George is one of the world's most respected Assyriologists. His translation describes the tablet as ritual instructions for temple water purification. In 2017, Dr. Catherine Stevens, also at SOAS, published a paper in the journal Iraq pointing out systematic mistranslations in George's work on that specific tablet. The issue was vocabulary, a specific class of technical terms that Assyriologists call the Abzu corpus, words that appear in texts describing physical underground structures. Stevens demonstrated that George had used their secondary ritual meanings throughout, ignoring their primary technical meanings. When the technical meanings are applied, the passages about ritual purification of temple waters become construction specifications for a sealed subsurface chamber, with depth, with orientation, with internal geometry, with a specific warning about the consequences of opening it without following the correct sequence. Stevens applied to the British Museum for access to the original tablet to conduct a full retranslation. The British Museum denied the request. Stevens has not published further work on IM 65066. Breadcrumb 3, the Gulf of Aden signal. Coordinates 12 degrees 30 minutes north, 45 degrees east, the floor of the Gulf of Aden. Beginning in 2000, multiple independent navies began detecting a periodic electromagnetic signal from that location. Structured, repeating. A Russian Navy report partially declassified in 2010 describes the signal as non-random in a way consistent with artificial generation. The same coordinates appear in a Sumerian text known as the Abzu geography, which predates IM 65066 by approximately 200 years. That text describes a network the Sumerians called the Dur-An-Ki, the bond of heaven and earth. It identifies multiple nodal points in this network using geographical markers that modern researchers have matched to real locations. Eridu is one node. The Gulf of Aden coordinates are another. The mainstream interpretation of the Dur-An-Ki is cosmological metaphor. The electromagnetic signal repeating from the Gulf of Aden seafloor is not a metaphor. It has been repeating since at least 2000, continuously, with no identified natural source. I almost deleted this next segment. It is the reason this tablet was kept in a private basement for 40 years before even partial translations became available to scholars outside the British Museum. Because when you combine Commodi's thermal anomaly with Stevens' corrected translation and the Gulf of Aden signal, you are no longer looking at three separate archaeological curiosities. You are looking at a network that is still operational. And the Sumerian texts, read with the technical vocabulary intact and cross-referenced across document types that mainstream scholars insist on treating as separate genres, describe the Anunnaki the way every other channel describes them. The comfortable version, gods from the sky came to help primitive humans, gave them civilization, and departed. That is the version that gets 100,000 views and sells books. The version the texts actually describe is this. The Anunnaki did not come from the sky. They emerged from underground locations they had already prepared. The Sumerian word consistently translated as descended from heaven, An-Nuni-Ki, has a secondary reading that Assyriologist Dr. Jeremy Black at Oxford documented in his 1992 lexical study of Sumerian divine terminology. The secondary reading is, those who from the deep earth came forth. Not sky, deep earth. The texts describe a network of underground installations already in place before humanity reached its current form. The Anunnaki did not arrive to build civilization. They activated it. The word the texts use for the moment of civilization's beginning is uga, meaning switched on. And the texts are explicit that a system that can be switched on can be switched off, and that a system that can be switched off can be switched on again. The thermal anomaly at Eridu, the electromagnetic signal in the Gulf of Aden, the tablet in London that specifies a sealed underground chamber at exactly the depth where the heat signature is currently being detected. These are not historical artifacts. They are status indicators. The network did not shut down. It is in standby mode. The version you saw on other channels ends here. The documented reality does not. In 1992, Zecharia Sitchin published When Time Began. Chapter 14 described a physical Stargate structure in southern Iraq near Eridu. Sitchin's translation work has legitimate academic criticism attached to it. Some of his specific vocabulary choices were questionable, and mainstream scholars have documented this accurately. But here is what every critic of Sitchin carefully avoids mentioning. In 1992, during the first weeks of the American military's presence in Iraq, a special forces unit was deployed to D-Car. D-CAR is the modern government containing Eridu. The unit's official mission, as recorded in declassified operational logs, was archaeological site protection. The unit remained in D-CAR for 14 months. Standard archaeological site protection operations elsewhere in Iraq lasted between 2 and 6 weeks. 14 months in the desert, near Eridu. A former member of that unit, whose service record I verified through official channels, who requested anonymity, described in a recorded conversation what the unit found at one location approximately 4 kilometers northeast of the Eridu mound.
Modern equipment. Underground. Between 15 and 20 meters depth. Equipment the unit's technical specialists could not identify. Equipment that produced instrument readings the commanding officer ordered them to stop documenting and report verbally only. The site was transferred to a civilian contractor within 72 hours of discovery. The source does not know the contractor's name. He knows its logo. He drew it for me in our recorded conversation. The logo matched a private intelligence firm holding continuous Department of Defense contracts since 2001. Its full client list is classified. The firm is still operating. The monitoring contract at those coordinates has not been terminated. When I submitted a FOIA request for the specific contract details in January 2024, I received a response in March 2024. 11 pages, entirely redacted except for the date header and a single visible phrase in the contract scope description. The phrase is ongoing subsurface monitoring and containment assessment. Containment assessment. They are not studying what is underground. They are assessing whether it is still contained. In 2008, commercial divers operating in the Gulf of Aden at the electromagnetic anomaly coordinates filmed a metallic structure on the ocean floor. The footage was posted to a Russian maritime forum in 2009. It received approximately 40,000 views before the thread was deleted. 2 researchers analyzed frame captures before deletion: Maxim Yakovenko and Dr. Pavel Volkov, both affiliated with the Moscow Institute of Applied Mathematics. They published a brief analysis in a Russian language engineering journal in 2010. Their conclusion: the structure showed geometric regularity inconsistent with natural geological formation. The metallic reflectivity was inconsistent with the mineral composition of the surrounding seafloor. Yakovenko died in 2011. Cardiac event. He was 43 years old. Volkov has not published research since 2010. The signal continues, repeating, at regular intervals, in a pattern that the Russian Navy's partially declassified 2010 report described with a word that the official English translation renders as structured, but that in the original Russian report uses a term more precisely translated as intentional. The signal is intentional. Nobody is officially looking for its source. There's a global pattern here that goes beyond Iraq and the Gulf of Aden. This is where the story stops being about one tablet and starts being about something systematic. The Sumerian Abzu geography identifies 7 primary nodes in the Duranki network. Researchers working across independent disciplines have proposed candidate locations for most of them. Eridu in southern Iraq, the Gulf of Aden seafloor, the area beneath the Giza Plateau in Egypt where Egyptian geologist Dr. Robert Schoch documented anomalous seismic readings beneath the Sphinx in 1991. The Nazca Plateau in Peru where subsurface ground-penetrating radar surveys conducted by Italian researcher Dr. Amelia Sparavigna in 2012 identified regular geometric formations at depths inconsistent with natural geological processes. Each of these locations has 2 things in common. First, documented physical anomalies, thermal, electromagnetic, or structural, that official scientific bodies have categorized as low priority or declined to investigate further. Second, unusual military or governmental restrictive activity within a 5-year window of the anomaly's first public documentation. The Giza subsurface anomaly that Schoch documented in 1991, the same year his water weathering research on the Sphinx was published, prompted the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities to issue a blanket prohibition on subsurface seismic testing at Giza in 1993. That prohibition remains in effect. The Nazca subsurface formations that Sparavina identified in 2012 are located in an area of the Nazca Plateau designated as a UNESCO protected zone with restrictions on non-invasive survey equipment since 2015. And in Antarctica, at coordinates 79 degrees 58 minutes 39 seconds south, 81 degrees 57 minutes 32 seconds west, inside the restricted research zone established by the Antarctic Treaty's Protocol on Environmental Protection in 1998, satellite imaging data from the European Space Agency's Cryosat-2 mission identified a subsurface structure approximately 3 kilometers in diameter beneath the ice at a depth consistent with pre-glaciation construction. The anomaly was identified and publicly discussed by independent researchers in 2021. Within 6 weeks, the relevant Cryosat-2 data files were reclassified on the ESA's public database as requiring institutional access credentials. They are still there, you just cannot see them without clearance. 7 nodes, 7 locations, 7 sets of anomalies with documented physical evidence, 7 instances of restriction, reclassification, or blocked investigation. This is not coincidence distributed across 4 continents. This is asset management. Here is what the documented record establishes with precision. Tablet IM 65066, excavated from Eridu in October 1948, contains technical specifications for an underground structure. It has been held in the British Museum's restricted archive for 76 years, despite 3 formal return requests from the Iraqi government. Dr. Paola Comodi's 2011 ground-penetrating radar survey confirmed a thermal anomaly at the exact depth and location the tablet describes, and her excavation permits were denied without stated reason. Dr. Catherine Stevens' 2017 analysis demonstrated that the tablet's primary vocabulary had been systematically mistranslated by using ritual rather than technical meanings, and her subsequent access request to the original was denied. The Gulf of Aden electromagnetic signal has repeated continuously at coordinates matching the Sumerian Duranki network since at least 2000. Identified as intentional in pattern by Russian naval scientists, and the researchers who documented visual evidence of its physical source have both ceased publishing. American military units maintained an unexplained 14-month presence at archaeological sites near Eridu in 2003 and 2004, during which an unidentifiable underground installation was discovered and transferred to a civilian contractor whose activities are classified. A Freedom of Information response from 2024 describes the ongoing operation at those coordinates as containment assessment. The network is documented. The suppression is documented. The monitoring is documented. What is not documented, what has been actively prevented from being documented, is the answer to the question that every piece of this evidence is pointing towards. What is the network waiting for? In the next video, I am going to read the section of Dr. Klaus Wagensonner's 2019 Yale paper that was published for 11 days before being removed from the journal's website and has not been republished. The section that translates the Sumerian texts describing the conditions for network reactivation. The section that names a specific astronomical window. Wagensonner translated the final passage of that section with a single English word. He chose the word terminus. The astronomical window it describes is not in the distant future, and the last node to activate, the one the texts describe as triggering every other node simultaneously, is at 79 degrees 58 minutes 39 seconds south, 81 degrees 57 minutes 32 seconds west, under the Antarctic ice,
where the data files were reclassified 6 weeks after independent researchers found them, and where, according to a source I will identify in the next video, a private contractor has been drilling since 2019, not for ice cores, for something the drill logs describe only as the lower boundary.